Hello, my friends. We're going with layers and layers logic. Okay, I'm in AutoCAD and I print out the list of layers which is in every drawing to show what is normally the general list of layers we have on the files. Okay, we have layer zero. Layer zero, well, beside we cannot get rid of layer zero. Is very handy because it's a special layer, especially for blocks behavior, which we'll cover later on. Then we have on 00 auxiliary layers. Orange, as we will see also later on, is the color 30 actually is the only color it prints invisible in our CTB file. And we have three layers of auxiliary layers. It's areas and frames and revision and notes. Revision and notes actually prints and is normally for revision cloud. And we have a brief explanation of all the layers. We can go in detail. Areas is normally to bound an area for to subtract the data from the area, and frames works very well for the grid in the drawing or for the let's say that we draw an A3 to print things like that. Then we have a set of layers for the layouts. So we have one for annotation that goes on the layout. Then we have one for diagrams if we have to draw things, lines or arrows. Sometimes it actually comes handy to draw straight on the layout instead of on the model, on the layout. Then we have one for entourage if we need to do something that is unrelated with diagrams or we have to glue, let's say, furniture. It might be the case. It's unlikely. And then we have the viewport. Then we have the layers of 00 xref. Okay, we have two types. Those xref that are printable and those xref that doesn't print. And this is key to know because very often we'll have a Google image that is not to be printed but to copy the site, to copy the surrounding buildings, and very often we have images that we want them to appear on the drawings, and it can be for images or for other drawings. Anything that is external to the file that is doesn't save as the DWG file is what we call an external reference. Okay, then we have the technical layers. We have site is very important. It is normally related to the legal aspects of the land, the boundary, and some data about the property and cadastral details. Then we have compliance, which is very useful to draw diagrams of setbacks or maximum height, maximum permeable area, or any restriction or restraint that has the site. It might not be, it doesn't need to be from council or from the government. It might be that our clients tell us not to go beyond a certain line on the building because they want a bigger backyard. But we could draw that line on compliance. Then we have one for landscape, electrical, hydraulic, mechanical. Okay, and then we have amenities and finishes. Oh, sorry. Amenities and finishes. Amenity is normally on security and CCTV camera, shadows, etc. And finishes with joinery and annotation and things like that. Okay. So then we have architectural, construction, outdoor, and structural. Now this could be confusing because in a previous version of the layers, we used to have a similar scheme of layers as we have in architecture, which I'll cover in just 30 seconds, for every one of these layers. And we come to the conclusion that with one layer might be enough. Now, what do we put in construction, outdoor, structural, and urban? Okay, this is important to understand. Architectural is normally the subject of the core of the project, which normally is a house, or it can be a fit out, or it can be whatever they are hiring us for. Like it can be a furniture, a piece of a table that we have to design. Construction is for the definition of that item in scales smaller than 1 is to 50, 1 is to 20, 1 is to 10. And the reason is because we might draw on top and we might hide the layer construction. And it sometimes come handy to draw a detail on a plan that already exists. Let's say that we have a section and we just draw a couple of layers of brick, but only one corner of the building. And that we can hide it in the general plans, but then we can zoom in and turn on the layer and have all the context of that detail without wasting time on drawing the whole detail apart and getting messy. Outdoor is whatever is from the legal boundary of what we're doing and the core of what we're doing. Now, in a simple explanation, if we're doing a house, outdoor would be whatever is outside the house but still inside the property, which normally we have some sort of relevance or is within our scope, even though it's not the key. Now, what happens if they actually hire us to do landscape? Well, I mean, if things change, we change the layer. So this is just a case for the most common situations. But normally we do a house and then we do the landscape, which we can then turn off everything at once. Now, the idea of this is that we draw and then we create blocks and we put the block in the layer. So then we can hide everything at once, or we can create visibility studies. So by having, for example, the outdoor will happen only normally we have one drawing for landscape because normally there are no stories of landscape. It could be, but most common there is no stories. So we could have everything in a block and just show it when we need to show, maybe on the ground floor, but maybe it doesn't need to be shown on the basement. Actually, it doesn't make any sense to be shown on the basement. So we can hide everything at once by grouping it and do a block with that. Then we have a structural, which is for structural elements. We use very little. And then we have urban. Urban is for anything that is outside the boundary. We put it in urban. The adjacent properties of the river and the road, anything goes in urban. And the idea again is that we block everything in urban and comes very handy on the site plan, or even on the ground floor we show a bit of the street and the buildings outside, and we can trim the block as with the command xclip we will show. Now we go now to the important part, the architectural layers. We have two groups. One is the existing and one is the proposed. And it's very important that we keep in existing what is existing and propose what is proposed. Very often we do projects of renovations in which existing is pretty much the whole project. And there are projects that is absolutely a blank canvas, which doesn't exist these layers. We just get rid of them. Now in existing we have the layer demo, and we could add the layer demo path or demo projection or demo section if we need them. So sometimes we need to do an elevation of demolition and go to more specific, so we can create with suffix this one. So this is kind of the base. Now then let's go to the core of the core, which is the architectural propose. Okay, so we have behind and beyond, which are layers that are for like X-ray. Even we can use it for stages or for anything that is with a dashed line. It can be a million things. Then we have projection, and then we have section. And by the way, there is one layer missing, which is entourage, which I explain in a minute. Projection, anything that we're not cutting. Section, anything that we are cutting. In theory, we're cutting always something, except if we do a roof plan, which is we are away. If we do an elevation, in reality, we cut in the ground away from the building. So let me go now to the drawing and explain this a bit in detail. Well, not in detail. In detail is explained already. In general lines, in fact. Okay, let's go, for example, to this section. Okay, this is actually a block, which is very handy. So we can do a block in place. Okay, so normally we use the layer section is anything that is cutting, and you can see that it would be I'll just put this one section, and in this case we created 3 levels of section, which is fine. We can create 20 layers of section if we need to do so. Sometimes with one is enough, But what we do in most cases actually create at least two, one for the terrain and for something that is really thick. We normally put in color black and thick, and then one section 2, which is normally for blocks. We also go very often in this case, this is the case, for section 3, which is the yellow, and we explain the color code later on. Okay, so we go here. Yeah, section 3, and it's a bit thinner than the then for projection is the same. So we have, this will be projection 2 probably, a projection 3, and this will be projection 3 also, but just in different colors. The colors and the layers, we have a color by default, but we can change it as long as we remain on the logic of the color, which will be explained later on. Then there will be things like, okay, projection pattern. This is a hatch that we use for void areas, which is kind of beige. And then this one, the section should be on section pattern, because it's a pattern on, it's a cut hatch. We probably this should be also, well, it's in construction. This is sometimes it's a reason because we can hide everything at once. Otherwise, it would be in proposal section pattern. Okay, so this is a bit the idea. Then we have the layers annotation, and then we have the layers entourage. Yeah, entourage and annotation is not, it wasn't showing on that list of layers. That was a mistake, but I can explain in a minute. Entourage is for things that are real, that appears in the drawings, but are not within our scope. For example, a car will be real, will be most likely appear on the house. It's handy to have it in the garage, but it's not our scope to design the car or people or furniture. Now, if we're doing, for example, joinery, then joinery will be part of our scope. But normally we just use this set of basic blocks. All this goes in entourage, so we can hide them quickly. Yeah, but they very useful to get the scale and the sense of a space. And then we have annotation, which are basically annotation, things that doesn't exist, it's just words and dimensions and things like that. And I think with this cover a fair bit on the layers and the layers logic.